Someone asked me this fun and quirky question in a mentorship session. I think that really sums up all of these themes. Basically, if you were a mode of transportation, what would you be and why? So I said to them, I'd be a jet ski.
Hello, I'm Lindsay Aiken, and I manage career services for the Department of Management Science and Engineering at Stanford University. Welcome to MS&E Stories and Voices, Graduating Student Profiles. Discovery is one of the most important and fun things in life. Discovering who we are, what we love, new places, foods, experiences, discovering the processes and methods that work best for what we want to do. And dabbling in many different areas is one of the best ways to make all of these discoveries. My guest today, graduating master's student Poorva Bhalerao, has been dabbling and discovering throughout her entire life, so I'm looking forward to exploring these topics with her. Poorva, thank you so much for being here. Let's get started with a discovery of your pre-Stanford background.
Sure. I was born in Nashik, which is a town in western part of India. When I was 5, my dad passed away. That kind of had a big impact on my life. My family moved to Pune, which is kind of a metropolitan city close to Mumbai. We had a lot of family there, and it's also known as the Oxford of the East because there's a lot of good schools there at all different levels. So I did all of my schooling in Pune, stayed there for my undergrad in computer engineering. I went to an all-girls school. I had also considered physics, mechanical engineering, astronomy at various times until then, but I really loved the problem solving that is so central to computer engineering. At the same time, I had this love for astronomy and space, so I started the university's first astronomy club and collaborated with different local institutes to learn more about it. We even did things like building instruments for telescopes and visited different radio telescopes in the region. This was really when I learned the value of taking initiative and creating opportunity for yourself if you want to learn something new. As part of this, I also came to the US for the first time for a summer program in 2018 at Mount Wilson Observatory in Pasadena. That was my first time in the US as an adult, and it was really a fun place to be. I learned how to do research there. I learned observational astronomy, but soon realized that it wasn't really something I wanted to do long term. And so the next summer, although I loved astronomy, I also wanted to explore software engineering and computer engineering. So I worked on an algorithm design project for an astronomy space telescope. It was through this that I learned about software design, thinking through that process of problem solving, optimization, and scheduling.
That's starting to sound a lot like MS&E topics.
Oh, yes, the work was really fascinating. Though I learned that theoretical research wasn't for me because I'm really easily distracted academically, I realized that throughout school and college and continuing at that internship too, I'd always wanted to follow like intellectual paths just for the curiosity of it, diving into all sorts of topics without any real like intention nor inhibition at the same time, wanting to learn more and more and more. And when I say I didn't have intention, it was more like I didn't know where that path was going to lead me into. But just because I wanted to learn, I got into it and got something out of it too. My next internship, which was in my third year, was with Microsoft. I liked it so much, I went back after I graduated as a full-time software engineer.
And the intellectual curiosity continued once you were working too?
Oh, yeah. There was a huge learning curve because Microsoft is such a large-scale business. I had never worked in corporate. That was my first job. I learned about software engineering, how to code, but eventually I also developed an interest in business, also in design, in how to collaborate with others, and also converting like these big ideas into tech, into code, and into products and putting it in the hands of the users. I was always thinking about how designers view the problem and how product managers also kind of work to bring it all together. So that role was actually really intriguing to me. I used to observe the product managers on my team and talk to them a few times and really wanted to understand how product or a piece of software goes from conception to launch in like different stages of a company or different stages of a product. So talking with some of these product managers and leaders within Microsoft, I asked to shadow them and worked on my own smaller project. And I did that from start to finish just to get a flavor of what that job looks like for me. So soon it was like, oh, I really like that. I would really love to do this cross functional work, which has problem solving at its core. So I was like, what next? Do I really want to stay in software engineering or do I want to pivot into product management? And all of those things kind of led me to come back to university to learn more.
We see lots of people coming back to university and into the master's program to position themselves for a promotion or a pivot. And whilst that's usually a big reason, it's not always the main reason. And I'm thinking for you that this seemingly insatiable intellectual curiosity was also a part of your motivation.
So I had three main reasons for coming back to university. One was what I mentioned earlier. I really wanted to learn about, the business side of things, but be close to tech. And the second was at a more practical and personal level. I had completed my entire undergraduate degree in my hometown, and I lived at home while doing it. And then once I was working with Microsoft in India, I hadn't really gotten the full college campus experience and the experience of growing independently, living by yourself away from home. And I really wanted that kind of personal growth for myself where, I could just explore myself. And the third thing was definitely that intellectual curiosity too. I've been a nerd my whole life. And when people used to ask me about my hobbies, I didn't know how to answer it. And I used to say studying because I actually liked it. And I wanted to augment that engineering education with things like business, design, systems thinking, organizational behavior.
That's actually one of the best arguments I've heard for dabbling in all these different areas. Not just being able to see the big picture and pull things together, but that empathy for what everyone is doing and those different perspectives that they'll bring in.
I believe that it gives you the empathy because you have an understanding of different things that people do and how large scale systems work. And because you've tried them yourself or done those things yourself, you can relate to it, empathize with it, and become a better problem solver. I also think that by dabbling, you get enough insight to know what you don't know. It really puts you out of your comfort level. It kind of keeps you grounded and humble. And it means that you're willing and excited to bring in other people who have more expertise, which ultimately leads to better outcomes in any sort of workplace or project.
It sounds like getting out of your comfort zone is something that you find pretty important.
Yeah. That was also one of the things why I decided to come to university too. I realized that in my previous job, I was starting to get comfortable with it because it's so easy to do that. Like you get used to the big paycheck, the stock options, and then you become dependent on it. I wasn't comfortable with that idea of being too comfortable.
Oh, I love that concept. I wasn't comfortable with the idea of being too comfortable.
And it was so true. Even my statement of purpose for my application to Stanford was around it too. Because throughout my life, I've found that when I get pulled into different new directions, when I step out of my comfort zone or into an unexpected area, that is where the richest experiences for me have come from. Applying to Stanford was out of my comfort zone too. I didn't really think that I could get in. Like, honestly, it wasn't even there in my list of colleges to apply to. But I came across the program, I really liked it, and I really believe what's the worst thing that can happen? Someone says no, but you still have to knock on that door to check. And that is something that has opened a lot of doors for me personally. One of the things that appealed to me with Stanford was the flexibility and the versatility of it. I didn't really know or come in with any sort of plan about, like these are the specific classes. I was still pretty open to explore my interests, follow my heart, and as I saw, things that intrigued me throughout that journey. Another thing that really impressed me was the amount of project work and hands-on learning in many of the classes that Stanford offers. It really fit into my style of learning, which is, by doing things yourself.
So I've worked in the School of Engineering for almost 2 decades, and something I keep hearing a lot about is the T-shaped engineer of breadth plus depth. And you almost feel like an E-shaped engineer, someone with that depth, but then also a lot of different breadth. Like you're a really good, well-rounded generalist.
I like that you describe it as an E-shaped engineering. But like funnily enough, being a generalist was something that was a hit to my confidence growing up because I always felt like everyone else had their one major hobby or passion area. And even if that changed over time for them, people always had something specific about them. And I always thought that I didn't because I had so many interests and I wanted to learn so many things. But coming to Stanford, that, perception and that confidence level changed because so many people here have a very similar drive. They have varied interests and a lot of intellectual curiosity and that same desire to dabble. So I really felt at home. Then you add in such a variety of backgrounds that people come from. People come from different cultural backgrounds. They are at different stages of their lives. Some have a lot of years of experience. Some come straight out of college. Some are married. Some have kids. And so there's just so much to learn from everybody here.
I think we just need to reframe it and say that your hobby is being well rounded. Let's build on this for a second. What else did you do whilst you were here then that wasn't MS&E or MS&E related?
I really liked how Stanford allows you to choose courses outside of your immediate program. One quarter, I took modern contemporary dance. I also took this emergency medicine class. I got a FEMA certification in emergency response. It was really cool that I got to learn that. I also took self-defense. I highly recommend everyone to take a self-defense class. It's fun.
Let's go back then to this pivot that you were thinking of making. And I know you had this really great internship last year doing product management, this area that you were interested in when you came back. Can you talk a little bit more about that experience and how you were able to take in some of what you were learning across this wide range of classes that you were doing?
Yeah, the internship that I did had a lot of overlap with what we do in MS&E. My project particularly included taking an idea from 0 to 1. This is something that I'd learned from the Lean Launchpad class here in Stanford and also EE205, which was product management class that the electrical engineering department offers. So in Lean Launchpad, we basically worked on a project trying to make remittances easier and cheaper for immigrants who needed to support family back home. We were exploring if that could be like a good way for them to build credit score. And as part of this, we spoke with credit bureaus, we spoke with potential stakeholders. We soon also realized that this was a point where we needed to pivot our project based on the new information we learned. And then we worked for filing taxes for sole proprietors like gig drivers. And then we pivot yet again and knocked on doors of CPA firms in Palo Alto and talked with receptionists to get conversations with the accountants so that we could learn more about tax filing and how we could help automate it for them. So this entire journey of getting out of the building and talking to your users, testing things, breaking things, pivoting, failing, you're constantly assessing if that solution is worth going for, following this tight loop and applying design thinking in your work. So I really try to apply the same principle of product problem solving to my internship project. I interned at Walmart in their transportation optimization product team. So that basically means, how you can keep transportation costs in the supply chain low by optimizing like the routing, planning processes. And that's like one of the big line items in any retail company. It's a really important team. And I was able to apply all of those things I learned from Stanford in that project. So the first thing I did was go to a distribution center and actually talked with the truck drivers. I talked with different operations associates who worked in the field, who are actually doing the work and were going to use the product. I wanted to do that rather than just going in and saying, oh, here was the problem and here's our solution for you. And obviously, like leadership knows that there was a problem that needed solving, but I wanted to hear it for myself from the horse's mouth and figuring it out by myself. I totally believe that 70% of the process is figuring out what the real problem is, and the solution in comparison is the easier part of the whole thing.
Yeah, sometimes what we think we're solving for isn't really what we're solving for.
Exactly. I was able to solve prototypes for the project then and get them user validated and leadership validated. It was a good opportunity to have that cross-functional exposure. I also asked if it was what people were looking for, if I was headed in the right direction. So, getting that amount and quality of feedback was invaluable. Initiating these conversations with people on the business, finance, design, tech, data science, even. So, all in all, it was a really good learning experience, a very steep learning curve, and as well as the right process to solve the problem.
Yeah, total win-win there. And you very clearly did a good job because they gave you a full-time offer really fast. Like I remember you coming in to work on your negotiation with them, and that was really early in the academic year.
I've now joined the same team. I work in middle mile logistics, working on transportation optimization products. It's a super massive scale problem. It's very complicated, but really exciting to work on. Walmart is a Fortune 1 company. They have a huge supply chain, and operations inherently isn't what I thought I'd ever be doing. But of course, that's what kind of drew me in, that there is just so much to learn, something I've never done. And it's again goes back to that dabbling mentality that I have. Someone asked me this fun and quirky question in a mentorship session. I think that really sums up all of these themes that we have discussed in this conversation so far. Basically, if you were a mode of transportation, what would you be and why? So I said to them, I'd be a jet ski. And that's because there's no road per se. You have to, or you rather get to, figure that out for yourself, your own path, and decide how fast you want to go. So you get to decide where you want to go and how to get there. So if something comes at you, you can decide if you're going to go jump over it, go around it, or tackle it. I really believe like my life has been that way, and it's exciting, and I wish to continue it that way.
Jet ski is not what I would have thought of initially. That's a more unusual mode of transport. I'm going to give some thought as to what I think I would be. I love what you just said there because there's just so much self-awareness. You can see how you're bringing together all of this dabbling and the self-discovery and all of your academic curiosity. Like that's all coming together in your answer. It just sounds like you're in a really good place. So do you see yourself staying there and continuing to dabble in all of these different areas of the company maybe?
Walmart is really a good place to do that. It's a big company. There's so many opportunities. So possibly, yes, I'll probably be here and explore new things. Just last week, I was in an all hands for the fashion team. I was accidentally in that auditorium, but just decided to sit through it to learn about that business. And I've always felt like that, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time type of question in any interview is such an impossible one to answer beyond, just exploring or being in an area I find interesting. I never really have a very specific answer to that. But at least here at Walmart, you see that with senior leadership that they all seem to have moved around lots of different functions internally. So, I mean, who knows? I'd love to do that and see where it takes me.
I feel like there's going to be no end to all of your dabbling and discovery. This has been so interesting to talk about. I love this sense that you've had so much discovery about yourself and already in your career by dabbling and staying open-minded and curious about all of these different things. It's so valuable and important to do that, I think. I'm going to move into my final 3 questions for everybody. And so the first one is, what is some general advice you have for someone coming into the master's program that maybe they haven't heard from someone else?
I would just ask people to give yourself some grace. Try not to compare with those around you, because Stanford is really like a competitive place. And I'm saying that in a good way. Like, people are so ambitious, people do great things. And I'm sure that you will do great things here. But I would encourage you to not compare yourself till a point where it's stressful, and just enjoy the process and take your time. Just focus on learning and being curious.
It's so true. We can't ever compare ourselves fairly with somebody else anyway, because we're only seeing their outside and we only really have insight into our own insides. And so it's never a fair comparison in anything.
It's so true. Exactly.
And so then second question is your life maxim or your signature phrase, kind of life belief.
I always say that doing is the best way of learning any new thing. I write this in most of my personal statements, even on my LinkedIn, you'll find that. Every time I join a new job, I say that to my manager. The first thing I say is that, so that I'm not bombarded with like tons of documentation. I just get on into a smaller project and get into the weeds later.
Yeah, I think so too. And then final question is 2 books and another media. So 2 books that everybody should read, something MS&E related, something else just for fun, and then a favorite other type of media.
So I'm going to go with 2 podcasts and a book, if that's okay.
Totally fine.
I would recommend Lenny's podcast. So this is the more MSNE related one. This podcast is a lot about product and really cutting edge product practices. So he basically invites a lot of product managers from different companies at different stages. It's really informative and helped me understand how to do product. The second one, I really love listening to this. This is the non-MSNE one. It's called The Internet Said So. It's this Hindi plus English podcast by 4 content creators slash comedians. They just basically get together and talk about random things for an hour. And it's really engaging. I love to listen to it when I'm at the gym. You just learn so many random things in the world. And the book I would recommend is called 10% Happier by Dan Harris. The book basically talks about mindfulness in that how can you be in the present and not let yourself get consumed by the everyday pressures and not just go with the flow, but really soak in different experiences in the moment. So this was really good because it helped transform my view towards things like career, academics, and life in general, where I was able to reprioritize certain things.
I think that's so important. Well, Poorva, thank you again so much for being here. I'm really excited to continue watching as you graduate here and go out into the world and seeing what happens next for you.
Thanks, Lindsay. I had a great time chatting with you and sharing this with fellow MSNE and future MSNE and other students as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of MS&E Stories and Voices, Graduating Student Profiles. This episode was produced and edited by me, Lindsay Aiken, with editing support and post-production from Jim Fabry. Our music was composed and performed by Catherine Barron, MS&E Masters Class of 2023. Please be sure to subscribe to us on Spotify or whichever platform you're listening on, and check out our website at msne.stanford.edu. That's msande.stanford.edu. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.